Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my new Avengers Endgame deleted scene for Iron Man in the Soul World of the Soul Stone. So I'll explain what's going on here. It's the anniversary of Avengers Endgame. It came out 2 years ago. That's how long it's been. So the Russos were releasing a bunch more deleted scenes and really cool stuff from behind the scenes. So we'll break it all down. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs here. I'll also talk about the future of the Iron Man character in Marvel Phase 4, like the Iron Man Armor Wars series that's going to be happening next year. So if you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the Marvel Disney Plus episodes. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Loki is going to be the next big series to premiere pretty soon. But rewatching this scene, most of you can probably tell what's meant to be happening in this moment, even though the way you're watching it through the monitors is kind of hard to tell. The scene itself was meant to happen right after Iron Man snaps the Nano Infinity Gauntlet, being a parallel for the Thanos scene of him going into the Soul World after the first time he snapped the Infinity Gauntlet in Avengers Infinity War. The Russo brothers and the writers called it the way station when they were filming this scene, like a cosmic way station because of the way the Soul World works inside the Soul Stone. I will explain how the Soul Stone and the Soul World works in the MCU in a second, because it does get pretty crazy with the way they explain some of the twists in this scene. But what you're seeing here is the version of the deleted scene where his fingers are still in the process of snapping when he enters the Soul World, but because what you see in the Soul World is only meant to be a cosmic representation of people's souls, their life force, their essence, it kind of acts like a holodeck situation where your own mind is sort of conjuring the stuff that you see in here. So that's the reason why he's not wearing his armor in here. He just thinks of himself this way normally, so he's wearing the clothes that he was wearing before he activated his armor earlier in the movie. And what he's seeing in here is a combination of memories of the past mixed with the essence of a future version of his daughter, Morgan Stark, played by Katherine Langford. I will explain the time travel aspect of this too, like why she appears as the older teenage version of herself instead of the little girl version from present day. It's the same reason why Thanos sees the younger version of Gamora instead of the one from present day when he entered the Soul World. But her essence, the afterimage of her life force, tells Iron Man that his gambit worked, his rolling of the dice, that 1 chance in 14 million that Doctor Strange told him about, without saying it in so many words. The way they justify that, he said he couldn't tell him exactly because he was worried that Iron Man would then try to find a way out of it because that's what he does. But you could kind of tell the way they played that scene, the looks on their faces. Iron Man totally understood what Doctor Strange meant when he held that finger up, like, okay, I have to snap the Infinity Gauntlet or the whole universe dies. There's a much longer version of this scene on my channel that I posted a long time ago, so I'll post a link for that down in the description if you haven't seen that yet. But there is some very potato quality looking footage of them talking to each other, sharing this moment. And teenage Morgan Stark's dialogue is basically that she, Mom, referencing Pepper Potts, everyone is okay in the future, it all worked out just fine. Basically telling him he can rest easy. It all worked. The whole reason the Russos and the writers said that they filmed this scene was to give Iron Man a moment after he took that chance snapping the gauntlet to let him know that it worked. Because in reality, he actually died right after this happened, and you'd have no way of knowing if your own sacrifice like that had paid off unless someone literally time traveled back from the future to tell you that it worked. Like, oh, I'm from 10 years from now, it totally worked, we're all good. So here's how they explain the time travel aspect of this scene, because time travel is a big trope in the MCU now, like the Loki series that's coming up this summer will essentially be a time travel multiverse series with him hopping around in the timeline, but also traveling to alternate timelines. Within the MCU, the way they explain those alternate timelines is they function like fully alternate realities, like alternate universes. But this version of teenage Morgan Stark that Iron Man is talking to here isn't actually the real Morgan Stark traveling back into the past to meet him in the Soul World. Some of you have probably figured this out in the 2 years since Avengers Endgame came out. But what's actually happening here is that the Soul World inside the Soul Stone is a place that exists outside of normal space-time, like a pocket dimension that exists outside of space-time, kind of like the Speed Force. So when you're inside the Soul World, you experience the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. So that's why Iron Man is meeting the older version of his daughter, but they're inside the campsite with the tent there from earlier in the movie that the younger version of Morgan Stark had. And the teenage version of Morgan Stark that's talking to him here, Katherine Langford, is just meant to be the after image, the life force, the essence of the real Morgan Stark. And this after image of her just retained all of her memories from the future. So this is why the Soul Stone is one of the most dangerous or most powerful Infinity Stones, because it has this connection to all the souls, the life force of every living thing in the universe. That's sort of the critical part of the Infinity Gauntlet snap that Thanos makes, is that he's able to erase half of all life because the Soul Stone connects the rest of the Infinity Stones and him to all life in the universe. So the real Morgan Stark never needs to actually physically touch the Soul Stone or go inside the Soul World herself in order for it to retain a copy of her. That's also how they explain the young version of Gamora inside the Soul World as well. Like, it just retains a connection to her soul, and Thanos sees her as a young version of herself, because he's the person that's conjuring a lot of the imagery around here. But right after this scene, you have the scene of Spider-Man, Pepper Potts, Rhodey coming to say goodbye to Iron Man as he dies, and then the other deleted scene of everyone taking the knee, as the young Gamora walks off. Talking more about Gamora, just leaves taking off the planet. The funny thing about this scene too, is that everyone was like, man, Gamora's cold. She's not going to pay any reference to Iron Man or honor him in any way. You have to remember that the younger version of Gamora that traveled into the future, the Gamora from 2014, never met Iron Man, so she had no connection to him, didn't have any idea who he was. She didn't even have the connection to Peter Quill. That's why she kicked him in the nuts when he went in for the kiss earlier. They'll get into that version of Gamora when we get to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I don't think that she's supposed to cameo during Thor 4 Love and Thunder with the other Guardians, because I think the idea is that they haven't gone out and found her and brought her back into the fold yet. But the whole reason why they got rid of this Iron Man Soul World scene is because it's kind of a little cringy, but also because way too many people in the test audiences were confused about who Catherine Langford was playing. They didn't immediately realize that she was supposed to be the older version of Morgan Stark. Everyone just got hung up on them not doing the scene with the little girl version of Morgan Stark. Like, why wouldn't he see the little girl version of his daughter when he went in here? So it just overcomplicated the ending of the movie, which had already gone on for about a half hour. The whole big third act battle here is about a half hour long. And it wound up overshadowing his actual death scene, which you wanted to have this real weight to it. So as fun as it is to watch this scene, I do love watching all these deleted scenes. I think they made the right call in removing it. And Catherine Langford separately did say she'd love to come back in more Marvel movies or Disney Plus series as an older version of Morgan Stark. But the only way they could really make it work is to do it as a time travel story, because her version of the character is like 12, 15 years older than the little girl version of Morgan Stark in present day, 2023. So I think right off the bat, best option for something like that would be a potential future Young Avengers series when they get around to making that. And here's where we get to the whole Iron Man, Ironheart, Armor Wars of it all. Because before Marvel had announced the official Ironheart Disney Plus series, there's been some talk about that today as well. I would have actually said they could just turn Morgan Stark into their Ironheart in the MCU and just make her more like a version of Iron Lad from the comics for more Young Avengers connections, because in the comics, Iron Lad is a time travel character, but he's basically a little kid version of Kang the Conqueror, just pretending to be someone else. Earlier in the movie, they had that whole scene with Morgan Stark wearing Pepper Potts' Iron Man armor, and it seemed like good setup for them to pay off in a future series where an adult version of her character shows up wearing a full suit of armor. But what Marvel is actually doing now with the Iron Man legacy, the Iron Man character, is basically the Armor Wars series and Riri Williams' Ironheart series. Couple minor changes from the comic book versions of those stories, but the Ironheart series is supposed to come before Armor Wars, although I'm expecting Rhodey, War Machine, to show up during Ironheart and for her to cross over onto Armor Wars. Like, Ironheart will probably feed directly into Armor Wars just because those two characters share so much of a connection to Iron Man's legacy in his lore. They have already cast the Riri Williams character, but her episodes probably won't release until next summer 2022, and it'd be a slightly different version of her comic book origin story with less actual Robert Downey Jr. on screen than what you saw from the comic book version of that story. So in that story, Iron Man almost died, went into this deep coma, so he was effectively dead, even though he wasn't actually dead, but he'd backed up his consciousness to his computer systems as an artificial intelligence. So he became like a Jarvis version of Tony Stark running around the MCU, hopping from computer to computer. He was able to mentor Riri Williams until she eventually took the Ironheart name and then started working on her own with other Young Avengers heroes in the Marvel Universe like the Champions and the actual Young Avengers team. So pretty easy prediction to make that eventually MCU Riri Williams will probably show up in a Young Avengers roster when they get around to making that project, along with older versions of Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy, Wiccan and Speed from the comics, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, Kate Bishop Hawkeye, Elijah Bradley Patriot, who we just saw on Falcon and Winter Soldier. I know there are a lot of people that are trying to come up with theories about how he gets the super soldier serum, like maybe he gets a blood transfusion from his grandfather, Isaiah Bradley. You also have the Cassie Lang stature that we'll see during Ant-Man 3, and maybe a couple other new characters they'll introduce in the Disney Plus series. It's gonna be a long time before we see any Young Avengers project. But if you remember how they treated Old Man Cap during the Falcon and Winter Soldier episodes, that's probably how they'll treat Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man during Ironheart in the Armor Wars series. Like they did have that scene right at the beginning of Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 1 where you hear Old Man Cap's speech to Falcon from Endgame where he was giving him the shield. But that's about as close to a cameo scene as we got. Like, he didn't actually appear on screen. They just kept making funny references to him secretly being on the moon. Like, I thought that Captain America was on the moon. So I would recommend you have similar expectations for Robert Downey Jr. in these new Marvel Disney Plus series. Like, they include some playback of him from previous movies and dialogue that he spoke using that in different contexts in new scenes. Maybe another holographic recording like the I Love You 3000 recording from Endgame. The past couple of years, Robert Downey Jr. has been back and forth on whether or not he's actually coming back. Like he said, it would be interesting, and he might think about it at some point in the future, never say never. But right now, I don't know necessarily that he's actually booked to actually come back anytime soon. There are all kinds of rumors about him showing up on different series using a couple twisty ways to explain it, but I'll talk about that if it actually winds up happening. But everyone, let me know in the comments, how do you want them to use the Iron Man character and his legacy going forward in the MCU? Just gotta hold out for Secret Wars when they can pull in an alternate universe version of Tony Stark that's still alive. Maybe we'll get some Easter eggs for that during Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, like alternate universe version of Iron Man. While you wait for everything, everyone click here for that brand new Captain America 4 Marvel movie announcement, and click here for my full Falcon and Winter Soldier Episode 6 video. Thank you so much for watching. On your left, everyone, and I'll see you guys tonight.